The Hall of Suns was a monument to arrogance. It floated in the heart of the galaxy, a golden sphere large enough to hold 10,000 delegates, each representing a world that claimed to rule a corner of the star's light. From a dozen suns poured through its transparent walls, bathing the floor in shifting colors. The air hummed with 1,000 alien voices, all rising and falling like waves of thunder. They were gathered to end the Orion War, a conflict that had burned across 5 sectors for nearly a century. Billions were dead, whole worlds turned to dust, and yet no one spoke of peace, only of control. The Speaker of the Council, a tall creature made of shimmering crystal, stood at the center of the chamber, its voice ringing like breaking glass. "Today we vote on unity," it declared. "All member worlds must take a side. Those who refuse will be labeled as passive aggressors and stripped of their rights to council protection." The chamber roared in approval. Banners of war flickered on the holo displays, hundreds of alien symbols burning bright in the air. One after another, the empires swore their allegiance to one faction or the other. Some joined for pride, some for fear, none for honor. In the middle of the chaos, one seat remained empty, the silver chair of the Terran delegation. The humans had been invited again and again, but never answered. The Speaker gestured toward the empty seat. Earth remained silent. As always, it said, its tone mocking. "Perhaps the Deathworlders have finally learned their limits." Laughter echoed through the chamber, deep rumbling sounds and high-pitched clicks blending into a cruel chorus. The Serathi commander hissed. "They hide behind words of neutrality because they fear to bleed." The Vornak delegate nodded, its armor plates rattling. "They talk of peace, but peace is cowardice when strength is needed." And the council cheered. The mockery spread like wildfire. The humans were not present to defend themselves. They had sent only a message weeks ago, simple, calm, and direct. "We will not join your war." Nothing more, no threats, no excuses, no negotiation. To the rest of the galaxy it sounded like weakness, but to those who knew humanity it sounded like something else, patience. The Speaker raised its crystal hand and the laughter died. "The vote will proceed," it said, "and history will remember who stood for order and who hid behind neutrality." Lights flared across the hall. One by one the empires cast their votes, red for conquest, blue for defense, and the hall turned crimson. Almost every light glowed red except one. The empty human chair remained dark, not red, not blue, not anything. When the final tally appeared in the air, the Speaker smiled coldly. "The motion passes. All worlds are now bound to war. Those who refuse shall be regarded as irrelevant." The council applauded, but far away across the void of space, on a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable sun, the people of Earth did not cheer. They watched quietly as the galactic broadcast reached them. Millions of humans stood in silence in orbiting stations, in colonies on Mars, on Titan, on Luna, and even on the frontier worlds beyond. The Kuiper Belt screens across the solar system showed the image of the Speaker declaring Earth irrelevant. For a long moment nothing happened. The news anchors said nothing. The generals stayed silent. The President of Earth merely stared at the screen and whispered, "They think silence is weakness. Let's show them what it really means." The broadcast ended and the feed went dark across the Milky Way. The war began. Alien fleets clashed over the Orion Rift. Weapons that burned stars were unleashed. Entire systems turned into ashes. Planets shattered. Moons split apart. But Earth remained still, watching, observing, studying, while the rest of the galaxy tore itself apart. Reporters mocked humanity, saying the Deathworlders have gone soft. Even the soldiers on alien fronts joked that humans were finally civilized, but the jokes did not last. One night a Serathi fleet chased enemy ships too far from the battle line. They crossed into an unmarked sector of space full of dead rocks and frozen gas. It was supposed to be empty, but it was not. On the edge of their radar faint signals appeared, small outposts, small stations, nothing worth noting. The commander ordered the fleet forward. The first missile struck. Before they even saw it, a beam of white light cut through 3 battleships in a single line. Their hulls dissolved silently into dust. No explosion, no flame, just disintegration. The Serathi captain screamed through the comms. "Who fired that? Where did it come from?" But there was no answer, only static. Then came a voice, calm, quiet, unmistakably human. "You crossed into Terran space. Leave now or be unmade." The Serathi fleet tried to reply, but their systems froze. Every reactor, every weapon, every sensor offline. Ships drifted powerless across the void as the radar filled with shapes, hundreds, thousands of them, dark triangles moving in silence. The human fleet had arrived. They didn't glow, they didn't broadcast, they were invisible until they wanted to be. The Serathi tried to retreat, but their engines failed, and then in perfect formation the Terran ships surrounded them, not attacking, not advancing, just waiting. The Serathi commander sent a desperate signal to the council. "We have encountered Deathworlder forces requesting backup." The message never reached them. The humans jammed every frequency, erased every trace. The entire Serathi fleet vanished within hours. The council thought it was destroyed by enemies. They never realized the truth until weeks later, when their own scouts entered that same region and found it different. Sensors detected thousands of objects orbiting a dead star debris maybe, but when analyzed the readings showed something terrifying. The objects were not wreckage, they were ships deconstructed and rearranged into a massive ring structure surrounding the system's sun, forming words in Terran script visible. "Even from orbit, stay out." The council panicked. Rumors spread that the humans had awakened, that the Deathworlders who once fought for peace were preparing for something far greater. The Speaker called an emergency session. "Earth cannot be allowed to act independently," it shouted. We will send envoys, we will demand their compliance. But the delegates hesitated. None of them wanted to approach Sol. The memory of human wars still haunted the galaxy. Old archives spoke of a time when humanity burned 3 empires to ash during the expansion wars, when their ships turned moons into glass and cities into vapor. The humans had changed. Since then they had become quiet, patient, diplomatic, but everyone knew that silence was the sound before a storm. The Council finally voted to send a single scout fleet to observe Earth. When the ships reached the edge of the solar system, they found something impossible: a barrier, an invisible wall of energy stretching across billions of kilometers. No weapon could breach it, no signal could penetrate it. Their sensors registered it as a field of pure static, but within that static faint patterns appeared, pulse rhythms, heartbeats, the signature of life itself. The humans had built a shield not of metal but of living energy. The scouts fled, reporting back in terror. The speaker denied it as a myth, but the panic had already spread. Throughout the Senate, world's whispers began. The Deathworlders are awake again, and for the first time in centuries the council chambers were silent. The empires that had mocked Earth now feared to speak. The speaker tried to calm them. They will not act unless provoked, it said, but deep inside even it could feel the unease, because somewhere beyond the void, behind that living barrier, the humans were preparing. No declarations, no banners, no noise, only movement, the kind that only warriors make before they marched to end a war. And when the first alien fleets accidentally crossed into a Terran colony near Gliese, the silence broke. Humanity did not send diplomats, they sent a message, one word acknowledged, and across the stars lights began to move. The Deathworlders had chosen to answer. 4 days the galaxy said nothing. After the Serathi fleet vanished, no one wanted to admit what had happened. The council silenced all reports, calling it an internal failure, but the whispers spread faster than any ship. Rumors of human intervention filled every channel. The smaller races panicked, the greater empires laughed, pretending they weren't afraid, but deep down everyone knew when Deathworlders act the universe listens. And then it happened without warning. Every communication network, every holofeed, every frequency from the core worlds to the edge went dark. The stars flickered, the signal static filled every screen, and out of the static came a voice, calm, low, human. This is Sol. Command transmission begins. You have entered Terran-controlled space. Leave immediately or face response protocol. The words were simple, but the tone carried weight like thunder. Contained in silence, the council chambers exploded in noise. The speaker shouted, trace it, find where it came from. But the analysts looked pale. It came from everywhere. One whispered, every relay, every satellite, every beacon repeated it simultaneously. We didn't receive the message, we were part of it. And before they could react, the image changed. The screens flickered, showing the solar system for the first time in centuries. Earth hanging blue and alive under a network of enormous orbiting structures, glowing faint white lines connecting every planet, every moon, every rock, like veins of a living being. That can't be real, one delegate whispered. The last scans showed only minor colonies. But the truth was undeniable. The system pulsed with energy so massive it distorted nearby space. Every few seconds a flash rippled through the darkness from Neptune to Mercury in perfect sync. That's not a defense grid, said the chief of intelligence, that's a heartbeat. Then another transmission followed, this time visual, a single Terran standing in front of a dark metallic flag, his face emotionless, his uniform plain black, no rank insignia, no medals, his eyes steady like stone. You were told to stay out, he said, you were told to end your war. We have remained silent, we have remained patient, but patience is not weakness. Your ships crossed into our colonies, civilians died. Now the silence ends. You have one cycle to withdraw all forces from the Orion sector, or the next signal you receive will not be words. The message ended and the screens went dark. The council sat frozen. The speaker trembled with visible cracks forming across his crystal skin. They threaten the entire galaxy, he said. We will not be intimidated by savages from a death world. But his voice shook even as he spoke, because every sensor in the hall began to hum faintly. The same pulse that came from Sol now echoed across their systems, the Terran frequency moving through space faster than light itself, synchronizing everything from communication nodes to reactor cores. In the span of minutes, half the galaxy was resonating with the rhythm of Earth, as if the entire cosmos had begun to breathe to a human heartbeat. The council ordered immediate countermeasures. Fleets were scrambled, codebreakers tried to intercept the signal, but nothing worked. It wasn't data, it was music, low, deep, impossible waves of energy that rewrote the laws of physics around them. On distant worlds, machinery stopped, weapons refused to fire, drones fell from the sky, entire navies froze in midspace. One by one their systems flickered and died, all except Terran ships, which moved untouched through the silence. The speaker demanded, where are their fleets? No one answered until the long-range telescopes on the rim picked up something impossible, thousands of small blue flashes between stars, entire regions lighting up in patterns, forming corridors through the void. Then shapes began to emerge, black silhouettes moving in perfect lines. The human fleets were not coming from one place, they were coming from everywhere. Their ships moved through folded space like shadows, appearing and vanishing without light propulsion. How can they move like that? A general screamed. They're bending real space. No, said one scientist in horror. They're walking through it. Within hours the first contact was made. A Zerati patrol fleet stationed near the Orion border detected movement. 1,000 Terran ships appeared in front of them without any warp signature, their engines silent, their hulls glowing faint blue. The Zerati tried to communicate, but their systems crashed instantly. The human flagship opened a channel for 3 seconds, no image, no sound, only a pulse that traveled through every crew member's mind, words not spoken but felt. Leave now, this is your only warning. When they didn't move, the humans acted. The Terran fleet shifted formation, weapons charging with no visible energy output, and then the stars vanished for a heartbeat. When light returned, the Zerati fleet was gone, completely erased. No debris, no radiation, just absence, like it had never existed. The Council received fragments of the report before the connection died. One fragment repeated endlessly. They erased space itself. Panic spread. Governments demanded action. Empires shouted for retaliation, but none dared to send ships toward Sol, not after what they had seen, so they sent probes, small drones invisible to scanners. They reached the edge of the solar system and stopped, unable to go further. Something unseen held them in place. The instruments detected waves of energy layered on frequencies that defied measurement. One probe managed to transmit a single image before shutting down. It showed a ring of massive constructs orbiting Pluto, metallic monoliths taller than mountains emitting faint blue light, forming a perfect circle. Scientists magnified the image to read the markings engraved on their surface, words written in ancient Terran language. This system is not part of your war. The probes self-destructed seconds later without external cause. The Council sat in horror. The speaker whispered, "They are not threatening us, they are isolating us." Another delegate trembled. What if they intend to end the war themselves? The speaker glared. If they intervene, they will face the full strength of the galaxy. But his words felt hollow. The others could see it. He didn't believe his own threat, because deep inside everyone knew the truth. The full strength of the galaxy had never faced the Deathworlders, and those who had were no longer alive on Earth. The humans prepared in silence, vast fleets hidden beneath the ice of Europa, factories humming under the seas of Neptune, soldiers trained in zero gravity, their armor black as night, their ships powered by engines that didn't shine. Humanity was awake again, but not angry. Their eyes were calm, their movements precise. They had waited centuries, studying every empire, every weapon, every weakness. They didn't want domination, they wanted silence restored. When alien fleets entered Terran space again a week later, no alarms rang, no broadcasts came. The humans didn't repeat their warning, they didn't need to, because this time the stars themselves began to darken one by one. Entire sectors dimmed as light from distant suns bent away, swallowed by something unseen. The last transmission before the blackout came from an alien scout near the edge of Sol system, a single phrase broken by static. They are not attacking, they are turning the galaxy off. And then everything went silent. The stars dimmed slowly like dying candles across the black void. Entire sectors fell silent. Scanners detected nothing, no energy, no movement, just emptiness. Then suddenly light returned, not sunlight, not starlight, but blue-white fire lines stretching from one end of the sky to the other. The first witnesses were miners on the edge of the Orion rift. They saw massive shapes emerging from darkness, ships so large they blotted constellations, their hulls matte black, their edges glowing faint silver. They moved like living things, not propelled by engines, but by will. The miners sent warnings to the nearest fleet command, and before their signal could finish transmitting, their screens filled with static. And then the logo of Sol Command appeared for the first time in 2 centuries. The message was simple: Terran Strategic Command now active, stand down or be assimilated into silence. Across the galaxy, billions watched in shock as images spread through every channel. The human fleets had returned, but these were not the same warships the archives remembered. They were something far beyond that. Their hulls were forged from living metal shaped by nanoforges that bent light. Their engines folded space-like fabric, their weapons invisible, their presence alone enough to freeze entire navies. Every ship in perfect formation, every movement synchronized to a pulse too precise to be random. The armies of light and iron had awakened. The Council panicked, ships scrambled, diplomats screamed across channels. The speaker shouted, engage them before they reach the core. But the admirals hesitated. No one wanted to be the first to fire on a Deathworlder fleet. A brave or foolish captain finally launched a missile. The weapon never reached its target. It stopped mid-flight, suspended in space like time had frozen around it, then slowly turned around and flew back, striking its own ship without explosion, simply folding it into nothing. Every sensor went blind. The human fleet continued forward, unmoved, untouched, unstoppable. One of the Terran ships broadcasted open frequency: no image, only voice. War is not chaos, it is mathematics, and you have lost the equation. The words rippled through every system like thunder in vacuum. Entire networks crashed as the code embedded within the broadcast infected their systems, turning enemy AIS into silent watchers instead of fighters. Fleets that once ruled the stars now floated powerless, their captains helpless as human ships passed through them like ghosts. One alien general, desperate, ordered his fleet to ram the Terran formation. Thousands of ships accelerated toward the human line, but just before impact their drives cut off. Engines cold, their hulls drifting imperfect. Alignment alongside the humans, as if gravity itself had decided to obey a new master on the council. World panic became terror. The speaker watched live feeds as worlds burned without fire, cities flickered, offline planets surrounded not attacked. Every invasion clean, efficient, silent. Human forces descended in orbital patterns, releasing waves of nanotech that shut down all weapons but harmed no life. Within hours the Orion sector was quiet again. No explosions, no cries, only silence. The humans called it reclamation. They didn't take prisoners, they didn't take territory, they simply removed war like a surgeon removing disease. The council sent pleas for talks, begging for humanity to explain, but the only response was the same pulse echoing through every star. 8 seconds dark, 3 seconds light, the heartbeat of Earth. Scientists noticed that even black holes in distant systems pulsed faintly in rhythm with it. Something fundamental in the universe was changing. One by one planets surrendered not to conquest but to stillness, their soldiers laying down arms because their weapons no longer obeyed them. Factories shut down, war machines powered off, as if the galaxy itself was tired of fighting. Then from the center of the Terran fleet a new transmission began. Every channel, every language, the same human voice, calm, low, precise. This is not retaliation, this is balance. You called us Deathworlders because we survived what you feared. We do not seek your end, only your silence. At those words the fleets, around 100 systems, began to glow blue, their lights forming geometric shape symbols that matched human neural patterns seen in ancient data, almost like they were seeding the stars with thought. Some called it invasion, others called it ascension. The council's top scientists screamed, "They are rewriting spacetime, every coordinate is shifting, they are turning our war zones into safe zones." And indeed, scanners showed that wherever human ships passed, gravity stabilized, radiation vanished. Debris dissolved, the very laws of chaos were being overwritten by order. "They're cleansing the galaxy," one terrified delegate said. The speaker shouted, "At what cost?" But deep down he already knew the cost was control, and humanity now held it completely in orbit around Earth. The great fleets continued to move, patterns upon patterns, warships weaving like silver threads across the void, forming rings within rings, every motion deliberate. The armies of light and iron weren't fighting, they were building. Within days the council discovered what they were building, a network of energy corridors linking systems through human quantum gates faster than any known warp drive, the first fully connected galactic grid powered by Sol itself. The humans had turned their fleet into infrastructure, a new spine for the Milky Way. And then came the final broadcast: "This war ends now, you will disarm, you will rebuild, or we will remove you from the equation." The message didn't threaten, it simply stated fact. The speaker screamed into the void, "You can't rule us forever." But the reply came instantly: "We do not rule, we correct." And at that moment every weapon left in the galaxy powered down simultaneously, from plasma rifles to orbital cannons, dead, silent, frozen, no matter who owned them. And the stars dimmed again before blazing bright. The human fleets aligned around every major world like guardians of peace, black monoliths of power, their reflections filling alien skies. Every child on every planet looked up that night and saw the same thing, the silent blue glow of Terran ships hovering in the heavens, their light reflected in oceans and glass towers like twin moons. The galaxy had entered a new age, one born not from conquest but from calculation. Earth had not joined the war, it had ended it. The speaker watched the broadcast from his throne, his voice breaking. "What have they become?" The answer came from the chief scientist, barely whispering, "They became what we forced them to be." And as the stars burned blue once more, the council knew the truth: humanity had awakened, not as soldiers, not as rulers, but as architects of silence. The armies of light and iron had not come to conquer, they had come to rewrite the meaning of power itself. The collapse did not begin with an explosion, it began with silence. Fleets that once filled the Orion rift with fire and chaos suddenly stopped moving, ships hung motionless, weapons offline, engines still burning but not obeying their masters. Across the galaxy captains screamed into their comms demanding answers, but none came. The systems showed perfect health power at full output, yet every command returned the same cold response: override active Terran protocol engaged. One by one entire navies fell under control of an invisible hand. The council chamber erupted in panic, the speaker's crystal body flickered with red light. Reboot the systems, shut down the grid, disconnect from Sol frequency. But the engineers shouted back, "It's too late, the code has merged with everything. It's inside our reactors, inside our navigation, even our atmosphere processors respond to them now." The speaker froze as he realized what that meant. Earth hadn't taken their ships, Earth had taken the laws that made their ships move across the void. Terran frequencies rippled through space like waves, bending time, bending motion, entire sectors locked in stillness. Then came the second wave, not of ships but of light, billions of microsignals invisible to the eye, passing through every sensor, every communication line carrying a single string of code. Project Silence active, and then the lights dimmed, worlds went dark, oceans stilled, clouds stopped moving, cities stood frozen in mid-power, their energy grids rebalanced automatically, heat cooling, air systems stabilizing. But without control, the galaxy's chaos had been replaced by stillness. On the Vornak homeworld their generals tried to fire a planetary cannon, the core refused to charge. On the Serathi capital they attempted to launch their defense fleet, but the docks sealed themselves, their AI announcing engines offline by Terran decree. Across the void the human fleets moved slowly like shadows crossing the stars, their ships unarmed but unstoppable, the very presence of their systems enough to rewrite reality. Where they passed, storms ceased, volcanoes quieted, debris fields formed into perfect rings, orbiting suns in mathematical harmony. "They're fixing the universe," whispered one scientist staring at his readings. "Their ships release energy fields that stabilize space-time distortions." The speaker glared at him. "No, they are fixing us. They're erasing the parts of us that cause war." In desperation, the Council ordered an attack. Every ship still loyal to them was sent to intercept the nearest human fleet. 2,000 vessels gathered near the Orales Belt, one of the last strongholds of resistance. They never made it past the first minute. The moment their drives activated, their coordinates scrambled. Every ship found itself somewhere else. Some drifted near dying stars, others deep inside empty nebulae. None destroyed, simply relocated, removed from the battle, as if moved by an invisible hand. The humans had turned the galaxy itself into their weapon. No shots fired, no casualties, only silence. The Council screamed for explanations. The best minds in physics, theology, and codecraft offered none. One said quietly, "They've merged with space-time itself. Their ships don't travel, they exist everywhere at once. They see the galaxy like we see a room." And then something even stranger began. Entire communication networks started rewriting themselves. The messages of panic from broken worlds replaced by calm human words. "Remain where you are. Power will be restored. Do not fight. This is correction." And indeed, power returned. Systems came back online. But no one dared touch anything. The Council world trembled under the glow of Terran fleets now orbiting above it, massive silhouettes reflecting blue light on the oceans. The speaker looked up from the dome of suns and saw them for the first time, 100 colossal vessels surrounding the capital world, their hulls smooth, featureless, radiating faint energy. He could feel it through his skin like warmth and cold together, a hum deep inside his bones. A voice whispered through every speaker, through every mind, "This is not punishment, this is preservation. You fought to rule the stars, we fight to keep them from dying." The speaker fell to his knees. "We only wanted peace," he said aloud. "You wanted control," the voice replied, "and in your hands control became war, so we took it back." Around him the alien delegates wept, some in awe, some in terror, some in relief. The weight of centuries of conflict collapsing under the sound of calm human silence. Reports flooded in from every sector. The war was over, not through surrender, not through negotiation, but through inevitability. The humans hadn't asked for victory, they had simply ended the need for it. The fleets that once belonged to rival empires were now repurposed, silently drifting into formation around human-controlled gateways, creating a single network that connected all worlds through stable corridors free of conflict. Ships carrying supplies instead of soldiers passing through them without restriction, guarded by unseen Terran oversight. No one dared break the new order. One attempt to fire a weapon within these corridors resulted in immediate nullification. The projectile vanished from existence as if time rewound a few seconds. Humanity had made war physically impossible within their zone of influence, which now included everything. The speaker trembled. "We've lost free will." The elder beside him shook her head. "No, they've shown us what freedom really costs." Outside the dome, the skies glowed brighter as the Terran fleets moved into new alignment, their lights forming geometric lines across the heavens, symbols older than the Council itself. The pattern resembled an eye, half open, half closed, watching everything. One of the scientists screamed, "They're creating a galactic surveillance net." But it was more than that. Every star began pulsing faintly to the same rhythm as Sol's heartbeat. Synchronization complete. When the process ended, the galaxy stood in perfect mathematical harmony. Energy evenly distributed, time flow stable, gravitational drift corrected, and at the center of it all, Sol system shining brighter than ever, like the heart of a living organism. Humanity had done what the gods of myth never could. They had unified creation by force of precision. The Council tried one last act of rebellion. They sent encrypted quantum messages to every empire urging uprising, but each message was intercepted by its own network. The screens flashed with the words "message received, analyzed, deemed irrelevant." Their rebellion ended before it began. The speaker whispered, "This is the end of us." And the voice returned one final time, soft, calm, absolute, "No, this is the beginning of silence." As the words echoed through the dome, the fleets of Earth turned away, their engines igniting with faint light, disappearing into the void without noise, leaving behind a galaxy that no longer fought, no longer argued, no longer decided. Humanity had erased war itself, and the universe stood frozen in awe as the hum of human machines faded into eternity. The galaxy had gone quiet for the first time in history, and in that silence came fear. The Council that once ruled 1,000 worlds now met inside a cracked hall, their golden banners torn, their voices weak. The speaker sat in the center, his crystal skin dimmed to a dull gray. "They have stopped the war, but not us," he said, his voice trembling. "We can still speak, we can still try to reason with them." No one answered. The delegates stared at the floor, their eyes hollow, their empires gone, their armies nothing more than drifting wrecks. The elder finally spoke, her voice soft like dust. "How do you reason with gods?" The speaker slammed his hand on the table. "They are not gods, they are men." But even as he Said it, the word felt small because deep inside every being in that room knew that humans had become something else, something beyond. They had not just stopped war, they had rewritten the rules that allowed it to exist across the galaxy system, stabilized time itself, moved smoother, fewer anomalies, fewer storms, everything too perfect. The council called it peace, the people called it suffocation. Ships no longer left their orbits, trade happened automatically. Through human-controlled gates, crops grew. Without seasons, planets aligned to rhythms, only Terran machines understood it was paradise, but without choice, and paradise without choice felt like prison. We must speak to them, the speaker repeated, we must find Earth. The aides exchanged nervous glances. No one knows where it is anymore, so the coordinates changed. After the reformation their system moves, it's not fixed in real space. Then we will search every frequency, every sector, we will send a message they cannot ignore, and so they built the greatest signal array ever constructed, a network of satellites spanning across 40 systems, powered by the last of their suns. They called it Project Voice. It would broadcast a plea strong enough to reach Sol no matter where it hid. The speaker stood before the glowing console, his voice shaking as he began. To the people of Earth, to the Deathworlders of Sol, this is the Galactic Council. We surrender, we beg for parley, not in arrogance, but in need. We do not wish to fight, we only ask to understand why silence, why control. His words echoed through the transmission corridors, carried by energy waves that bent through the void. The signal spread across the stars into the black unknown, and then vanished for days. They waited, no response came. The speaker grew weaker each sunrise, watching the same empty screens. The elder sat beside him, whispering, maybe silence is their answer. But he refused to believe that. No, they must hear us, they watch everything, they must have heard. And then one night the lights flickered across the dome, every console went dark, the stars outside dimmed, the air trembled with low vibration. The aide screamed, incoming transmission from unknown origin. The speaker's heart froze as the room filled with blue light, forming the holographic image of a single human standing in shadow, their face unreadable, only their eyes visible, glowing faint silver. You called, the humans said, their voice calm, deep, heavy. You asked for understanding, we listen. The speaker stumbled forward, we meant no disrespect, we only seek to speak as equals. The human tilted their head. You are not equals, you are architects of destruction. You called us to join your war and mocked us when we refused. Now you call us to fix what you broke. The speaker fell to his knees. Then why save us, why not end us? The human paused and then replied, because the universe needs you even if it does not need your noise. The words hit harder than any weapon. The hologram shifted, showing images of thousands of alien worlds, rebuilding cities, renewed forests, regrown oceans, purified. We corrected what you corrupted, we balanced what you bled, but peace must be maintained and silence is the only form that lasts. The speaker cried out. But we are alive, we need to choose, we cannot breathe without will. The human stepped closer, their face clearer now, old eyes weary but unflinching. You never learned, will you still seek freedom without responsibility? You still worship conflict? The room trembled. As the hologram flickered, every delegate clutching their heads as the human's voice filled the air. We gave you mercy and you call it control, perhaps you cannot exist without chains. The speaker screamed, no please, we can change, we can prove it, give us a chance. The hologram stared for a long moment and then said softly, prove it. The light vanished and the consoles rebooted. A new message appeared across the entire network, proof of peace begins now, observation active, duration indefinite. The council looked around confused. What does that mean? One asked. The answer came seconds later from the skies above the council world. Terran ships descended, slowly forming rings around the planet, each releasing beams of blue light connecting to one another in web-like structure. They're enclosing us, screamed a general, but there was no attack, only silence. Then gravity shifted, not pulling down, but inward. The stars bent, the horizon folded, and for a brief instant the entire planet existed in two places at once, the dome filled with blinding light, and then nothing. The council woke up to find themselves standing under a different sky. The sun's gone, replaced by a void filled with floating symbols, lines of Terran code glowing above them. The speaker looked around, trembling. Where are we? The elder whispered inside their test. Before them appeared the same human hologram, this time more solid, their voice echoing across the void. We will not destroy you, we will isolate you in peace. If you can live without war, without corruption, without deceit, you will earn your voice again. The speaker screamed, you can't cage entire civilizations. But the human only replied, we already have, and vanished, leaving them alone, their planet surrounded by invisible walls, no ships, no exits, no stars, just eternal twilight. The systems continued to run, food, air, water, all provided, but the skies never changed. The people cried out, but no sound left. The atmosphere, the humans had silenced an entire world, perfectly contained within a bubble of stillness. The council tried to send messages, but they vanished before transmission, their words erased by unseen hands. Days turned to weeks and then months. Life continued, but it felt hollow, like acting without audience. Finally one day the speaker climbed to the top of the dome, staring at the frozen horizon. Maybe this is what peace truly is, nothingness, he whispered, and from the wind came a faint echo. Now you understand the humans had spoken once more not to punish, but to teach across the galaxy. Every world that had cried for war now mirrored the same stillness. Whole sectors sealed off one by one, observation spheres glowing faint blue dots across the Milky Way. From above it looked like stars themselves had turned into eyes watching the darkness. The humans were measuring existence itself, proving a lesson in silence that words could never teach. And somewhere beyond, all of it far beyond the edge of the galaxy, soul burned brighter than ever, a blue sun at the center of a quiet universe. Humanity's voice echoing through creation. Peace is not a treaty, it is the absence of choice to destroy, and with that the experiment of mercy continued forever. The galaxy lived in silence for years. Inside the observation spheres everything was perfect. Food grew in endless cycles, water never dried, no storms, no famine, no war, but something inside the imprisoned species began to rot, not their bodies but their minds. Peace without purpose felt like a cage. The council world was one of the first to crumble. Small disputes returned, whispers of rebellion spread across the quiet cities. People spoke of freedom, of stars beyond the invisible wall. They began to test the limits, sending drones toward the edge of the sky. Each one vanished before reaching it, leaving only ripples in the air. The speaker grew old, but his voice carried the same desperation that had doomed them. We cannot live like this. We are not machines, he said to his counselors. We will show them that we still have will. They tried again, this time building ships secretly deep beneath the crust of their world, hidden from Terran sensors, or so they thought. Months passed. They constructed their rebellion from stolen machines. Their plan was simple: break the sky, breach the wall, call for help from other imprisoned worlds. They believed humans were watching but not listening, and that was their first mistake. One night, without warning, the ground began to tremble. The stars that never moved suddenly flickered like dying embers. Alarms blared, systems failed, air vibrated with a low hum that grew deeper until every living being felt it in their bones. The elder screamed, "They know." The speaker fell to his knees as the horizon began to fold, blue light spreading like veins across the sky. The dome cracked, revealing not stars, but a mirror above them, reflecting their entire world upside down. They saw themselves building ships, digging tunnels, rebelling. The reflection showed everything, every secret, every betrayal. And then the mirror shattered into dust, dissolving into energy. The human voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Observation complete. Result failure. Panic erupted. People ran screaming. The speaker shouted, "We can fix this, please, we can change." But the voice continued, calm, unbroken. Correction begins. The oceans rose without waves, lifting into the sky like columns of glass. Mountains melted into smooth plain. Cities dissolved into light one by one. Every structure turned transparent until only shapes remained, shadows fading into mist. The people screamed, but their voices were absorbed into silence. Their world did not explode, it evaporated, leaving behind only a faint sphere of blue light where a planet once stood, and then even that faded, replaced by empty space, as if nothing had ever existed. The galaxy watched through the walls of their own prisons, thousands of worlds, seeing the punishment unfold across the void. The message was clear: fail the lesson and you will be forgotten. On another world, the Vornak Empire tried to send encrypted transmissions between colonies, secretly coordinating revolt. Within seconds their message was intercepted and altered. It repeated their own words back to them, but twisted: we accept surrender. Confusion turned to terror when they realized their communication system had been hijacked by Terran code, their own voices used against them. The next morning, every Vornak capital vanished. No fire, no debris, just absence erased from maps. The scientists on nearby worlds measured gravitational voids where mass should have been. Something impossible had happened. The humans hadn't destroyed the planets, they had removed them from reality itself. One physicist whispered, "They are deleting coordinates from the fabric of space." One by one rebellious systems disappeared. Stars flickered out, leaving black voids where light once lived. Across the universe the pattern spread, forming constellations of nothingness. The council survivors watched in horror, each vanishing, marked by the same signal. Correction applied. Even the strongest empires begged for mercy. Some worlds fell to their knees, broadcasting prayers into the dark sky. We will obey, we will remain silent, please spare us. And the human voice answered, for the first time in centuries, silence is not obedience, silence is balance. Learn it or cease. On the remaining observation spheres chaos turned to worship. Temples rose in honor of the unseen humans. Priests preached that the Deathworlders were divine guardians, the bringers of stillness, the gods of void, but others whispered in fear, calling them devils that erase sin by erasing existence. Meanwhile, far beyond the rim of known space, the true Terran fleet watched from the void, unseen, invisible, their ships scattered across intergalactic dark matter, their senses recording every detail. They did not celebrate, they did not speak. This was not vengeance, this was order. They had become custodians of reality itself. The council's remnants, those who still breathed, gathered in secret, their voices low, trembling. We must find a way to talk to them again. One said, we can't reach them, we don't even exist to them anymore. Another answered, but the speaker's eyes still burned with faint hope. If they observe us, then they must still believe we can learn, he whispered. And if we can learn, we can still be forgiven. But deep down he knew forgiveness was no longer a human word. Humans had transcended emotion, they had become architects of equilibrium, they had learned to maintain the universe through logic alone. Empathy turned to precision, mercy turned to mathematics. Still the council tried. They built a monument from the last pieces of their world, a beacon that pulsed weakly into the dark, shaped like an open hand, a plea for understanding. The signal crossed the void, and for a brief moment it was answered. The stars brightened, the hum returned, the air shimmered as the human voice spoke. Once more you reach for understanding, yet you still reach outward, not inward. You still seek control, not acceptance. Your kind will never change. The speaker fell to the floor, tears of light running down his face. Please just tell us what you want. The voice replied, we want nothing, we only remove what cannot exist in balance. And then the hum stopped. The remaining delegates screamed as the ground began to fade beneath them. The stars flickered away, and one final word filled their minds. Erase. In seconds the council world was gone, not destroyed, not burned, simply removed from the equation. Those who remained in the galaxy looked upon the empty coordinates where once 10,000 worlds had been, now only stillness, pure black, silent, endless. Humanity's judgment had been executed without hate, without glory, without sound. They did not destroy life, they deleted noise across the Milky Way. Entire sectors went dark, each one replaced by calm light, and those who survived lived under an eternal blue sky that never moved, knowing that above them in the invisible layers of existence the Deathworlders were still watching, still listening, waiting for the day the galaxy learned true peace, or the moment they would need to correct again. Centuries passed under silence. Worlds that had survived the correction lived without war, without rebellion. Their skies never changed, their oceans never raged. Every sunrise looked the same as the one before it. The people no longer dreamed of stars, they feared them, because somewhere in the darkness beyond the still heavens the Deathworlders were watching. Their existence had become legend. Children were told bedtime stories of the blue light that erased those who lied. Priests preached that silence was sacred, that speaking against the order invited erasure. Even the wind seemed careful not to move too loud. The galaxy had become a machine of peace, perfect, unchanging. Unilive, and yet something stirred deep within that stillness, a tremor, small at first, then growing stronger. Senses that had slept for centuries blinked awake across hundreds of worlds, small ripples in space-time, readings that made no sense, gravitational distortions moving faster than light, patterns of pulses returning the same rhythm that every species still remembered. 8 seconds dark, 3 seconds light, the heartbeat of Earth. Scientists trembled as their screens flashed data long. Forbidden, it's them, whispered one. The Deathworlders' temples filled overnight with prayers and fear. Millions fell to their knees staring at the unchanging skies, begging for mercy, while the rulers of the remaining empires gathered in secret deep beneath their worlds, crushed, their faces pale, their voices barely whispers. What if they are coming back, said one. What if they found us unworthy again? Another shook his head. We have followed their law, we have kept peace, surely they will see. But deep down none of them believed it, because they all knew peace born of fear was not peace, it was survival, and humanity had never settled for survival. The tremors grew stronger, stars began to flicker one by one. The galaxy that had been frozen for ages started to breathe again. Winds returned, storms formed, seas shifted, mountains groaned, as if reality itself was waking from a long sleep. In the void shadows began to move, not ships, not fleets, but outlines vast beyond measure, drifting through the interstellar dark. No light, no sound, only silhouettes that swallowed starlight itself. The first images came from a small observation drone orbiting the ruins of the Vornak sector. The feed showed a black shape moving behind a sun its size, impossible. The entire star dimmed when it passed, and then something even stranger, the temperature of space around it dropped to absolute zero for a single second before stabilizing. Scientists panicked. That's not a ship, that's a void in motion. The data spread through the surviving worlds. Panic spread faster than light. Leaders sent emergency transmissions begging for forgiveness. The priests declared a new age. The watchers have returned to judge the silence. Then the voice returned for the first time in hundreds of years. It was not broadcast through machines, it came through the air itself, through bones, through thought. You kept peace by fear, not by understanding. Balance requires courage, not chains. Every living being heard it in their own language, in their own mind. No one could block it, no one could hide it. The sound made even mountains tremble. The speaker's successor, now a hollow man of glass, fell to his knees screaming, "Please, we have obeyed, we have done everything you asked." The voice answered, "You obeyed because you feared, not because you believed." The lesson remains incomplete. Above him the sky cracked open, lines of blue light spreading across the horizon, revealing shapes beyond comprehension, the shadows of Terran fleets, enormous structures drifting like ghosts. Each hull carved with glowing patterns, symbols of ancient human script, words that no one could read, but everyone felt they meant truth. They moved slowly, majestic, terrible. The air hummed with their presence, oceans calmed, gravity shifted, even time itself slowed in their proximity. And then one of the massive shapes stopped above a living world. The people below watched as the night sky turned blue. The voice spoke again, "We gave you silence and you turned it into prison. We gave you peace and you made It worship we gave you order and you made it fear. Perhaps the galaxy is not ready for freedom. Perhaps it never was. The world's leaders begged for mercy, crying out their confessions, their regrets, but there was no reply. The shadow ship descended, its light spreading across continents. People expected fire, destruction, death, but instead they felt warmth, peace, calm, and then everything around them began to change. Cities reshaped, forests regrew, pollution vanished. The entire planet renewed in minutes. The humans did not erase, they restored. When it ended, the world looked new, untouched by time. The people wept in relief. They spared us, they healed us. But then the ship spoke once more. This is not mercy, it is reminder. Do not forget again. The fleet began to move, spreading across the galaxy, repeating the process, visiting one world after another, repairing, fixing, correcting. But every act of healing came with fear, because those who resisted, those who questioned, simply vanished without trace. No screams, no destruction, just gone. The survivors began to understand the pattern. The Deathworlders were rebuilding the galaxy piece by piece, perfecting it, molding it into something beyond their understanding. One by one, every star system pulsed with blue light until the Milky Way glowed faintly in the dark like a living organism. Each world a cell, each star a heartbeat. The shadows aligned into formation, stretching across the galactic plane, forming a colossal ring of light visible from other galaxies. Scientists who dared to study it gasped. They are creating structure in space, they are folding the galaxy into design. When asked what the pattern meant, one old scholar whispered, "It's a circle of guardians. They have made the Milky Way itself into a fortress." And then came the last message from Sol itself, transmitted across every atom of matter: we are not returning, we never left, we are the system. Now the architects of balance remain until equilibrium is eternal. And then the shadows vanished, fading back into the dark, leaving behind a galaxy that glowed with quiet blue lines woven through its spiral arms, connecting everything, every planet, every sun, every mind, forever tied to the rhythm of humanity. The new children born after that day no longer feared the silence, they sang with it, their lullabies timed to the beat of 8 seconds, dark 3 seconds, light, the pulse of the universe, the voice of the Deathworlders. And far beyond the visible stars, past the edge of existence, the shadows moved once more, not toward war, not toward domination, but toward creation. Their fleets drifting into other galaxies, into other voids, spreading order across infinity. The humans had become what the universe needed, not conquerors, not gods, but keepers of silence itself. The galaxy no longer measured time by years or cycles, it measured it by pulses. 8 seconds, dark 3 seconds, light, the rhythm of existence itself. The stars moved to it, the tides obeyed it, and life grew beneath it in perfect harmony. Centuries after the return of the shadows, no one remembered war, not truly, not as flame and death, but as myth told in whispers, stories of the time before silence, the time when life thought it could rule itself. Now no one ruled, no council, no empire, no king, only the quiet system that held everything together. The architects unseen but always near. The Deathworlders, the humans of Sol, the ones who had rewritten creation, the ones who had become its foundation. The children of the new age were born into peace so perfect it felt like air itself carried purpose. Their cities floated in calm skies, their oceans shimmered like glass storms, gentle and predictable gravity no longer cruel but patient. Planets moved in flawless orbits, guided by invisible correction pulses that ensured balance. No machine failed, no world died, every piece of existence connected by a network no one built and no one could break. Yet deep within the minds of all beings a memory lingered, an echo of the old fear, not of destruction but of attention, because they knew the Watchers never truly left. Their presence lived in the stars, in the soil, in the sound of silence itself. Every being could feel them, sometimes when the wind stopped or when the lights dimmed slightly, that faint pressure on the soul, the feeling of being seen not by eyes but by the universe itself. It was the Deathworlders reminding them to stay balanced, to stay worthy. And though humanity's name had faded from language, their effect was eternal. Scholars tried to understand what had happened to them, what they had become. The theories were endless. Some said they ascended into pure energy, merging with dark matter itself. Others claimed they uploaded their consciousness into the quantum structure of reality. Some whispered that every atom in the galaxy now carried a piece of them, and when enough minds aligned in peace, humanity's presence grew stronger like a pulse breathing through matter itself. Whatever the truth was, no one doubted their existence, because the evidence surrounded them. Every planet that tried to disturb balance faced gentle correction, an unseen energy aligning events before chaos could take hold. When greed returned, resources shifted. When pride rose, systems cooled. When hate began to form, those involved simply vanished, replaced by quiet acceptance, as if the universe itself edited the story before it could repeat the old mistakes. And so the galaxy learned not to fight but to harmonize. Trade became sharing, borders became meaningless, identity shifted from species to unity, and in that unity humans were everywhere and nowhere. The new generations worshipped no gods because they didn't need to, they worshipped silence. They called it the Great Balance, and they said it spoke in light. The priests taught that the blue glow in the stars was the pulse of the old Deathworlders, still watching, still guiding, still correcting. And whenever a child asked who they were, the elders smiled softly and said, "They were us before we learned to listen." But in the deepest corners of space far beyond the spiral arms where the light grows thin, something vast still moved, unseen shadows drifting between galaxies, their outlines faint but immense. They were no longer fleets, they were patterns, waves of consciousness traveling through the fabric of existence, leaving trails of stability in their wake. Wherever they passed, chaos died, entropy slowed, stars that should have collapsed reignited, life that had faded began again, and in those reborn galaxies new voices rose, wondering what invisible hands shaped their peace, never knowing it was the same hands that once rose from a death world long forgotten, one that taught the stars the meaning of silence, one that chose balance over power, one that became the law of existence itself. Inside the Milky Way, the last memory of Earth remained in the form of light deep within the heart of solar pulse, continued steady, endless, echoing across the void, carrying words no longer spoken, but felt. We are not gone, we are everything you became, we are the quiet between creation and collapse, we are balance. That pulse reached every corner of the galaxy, every mind, every heart, every soul, and though no one could hear it, all could feel it. When the sun set and the sky turned blue for 8 seconds, the universe itself seemed to bow in reverence. The galaxies spun in rhythm, nebulae pulsed with faint blue light, like breathing, the Milky Way itself alive in harmony under the eternal gaze of its architects. And then from beyond the rim came one final whisper, soft like wind through stone: the lesson is complete, the balance endures. The stars shone brighter, the silence deepened, and for the first time since time began, the universe rested in perfect stillness, not empty, not dead, but full of calm purpose, the kind only humanity could leave behind, a peace so vast, so total, it needed no words, no witnesses, no return. The Deathworlders had fulfilled their destiny. They had not conquered, they had not ruled, they had not disappeared, they had simply become forever.